The focus of this video is on the use of interactive notebooks in the context of a math lesson. I teach middle school math and have found that interactive notebooks have been incredibly useful and worthwhile tools for both my students and for me. In this video, I'll discuss how I have implemented interactive notebooks in my middle school math classroom. I'll include tips for using interactive notebooks, and then I'll go over how I use interactive notebooks in the context of a specific lesson plan. First and most importantly, I have my own INB interactive notebook that I keep up to date right along with the students. I have found this useful because I always complete the activity in the notebook right along with the students. So it serves as a great example for what their notebook should look like, and it's also a great resource for students who may have been absent and need to catch up on what they missed for the day. At the beginning of the year, I wanted students to take ownerships in their interactive notebooks because I knew I would be using them so often. I set aside time for them to decorate the front of their books with numbers about me, since we're in a math class. They were able to use different variations, different stickers, anything that I thought would get them excited to be using their notebooks. I think this is something that could really be useful in other contents as well as other grade levels as well. So my students, I noticed, really enjoyed making them, and they felt more important than a regular notebook to my kids. So then next, the important thing we did was set up our table of contents. So the table of contents is where the students will list the page number and the topic of the lesson we are discussing. It serves as a great way for them to refer back to skills we learned in previous lessons and units. Next comes the words worth knowing, or the math vocabulary page. This includes definitions as well as examples and non-examples of important vocabulary words that they'd be using throughout the different lessons. Math is its own language, and it's definitely important to include that as you talk with your students in math class. So I was very clear then next about how I expected each page to look. The left side of our INBs are our input or our knowledge page. So anytime we have something on the left side, it's the new information we're learning. We put steps to solving problems or any notes we take on the topic. And then after practice with the topic, we complete the right-hand page, which is our output or show what you know page. Often I'll use word problems, analysis problems, or standardized testing questions that require students to apply the skills that they learn on the left side of the page. I was also particular about the way students numbered, dated, and titled each of their pages. And it's the same for me on both sides. The first weeks of school were all about learning how to use our INBs. So we did practice input-output pages with our expectations and procedures and a lesson on growth mindset so students would have experience using their INBs before we dove into content material. So for example, we talked about what the expectations and procedures are and took some notes on it. Then I had them do an activity for their output page on the right-hand side. So I knew that before our students would be able to use their INBs, they needed to practice with it, and then we were able to dive into the content page. So within a few weeks, students knew exactly what I meant when I said, go to your table of contents. I would post the lesson plan and the page numbers, and then they knew to immediately then go to those pages and label them appropriately without me needing to walk them through it. Logistically, I tend to use each input and output page for the objective of just one lesson. We may spend just one class period or up to several class periods on one input-output skill based on the complexity and depth in which we dive into the material. So for a review lesson, something on adding and subtracting integers, we might spend just one class period. Whereas this skill that I'm focusing on today in this lesson, solving two-step equations, this was a several multi-day lesson, and so we spent several days on it. Things that I don't tend to include in the interactive notebooks are worksheet problems or bell work problems. My students know that they are important, but they're separate from the work we do in our interactive notebooks. They use their interactive notebook skills to inform them and help them do those types of problems, but they are not put in the notebook. From a student perspective, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the INBs. Some say they're really helpful in organizing their thoughts and are a great resource for solving problems and even review problems. Other students simply like them because they feel more organized with their notes and papers as well, which is certainly an issue that middle schoolers face, and I'm sure elementary and definitely high school students as well. The way I tend to grade their notebooks has changed as the year has gone on. In the first quarter, I collected each student's notebook and gave a large classwork grade if they were able to upkeep their notebook just the way I had expected it to. However, as the years progressed, I've begun collecting their interactive notebooks after certain units, or assigning homework in them, or just doing spot checks as well. So it doesn't have to be one large grade. I've broken it down little by little as well. My students put a lot of effort into their notebooks, so I want to make sure they get the credit they deserve for it. So specifically, the lesson that I'm going to focus on today is a lesson in an 8th grade algebra unit on writing and solving linear equations fluently. The objective of this lesson is that students will be able to solve two-step equations. In previous lessons, students have mastered solving one-step equations and how to combine like terms. So combining like terms, solving one-step equations. And we also had practice writing one-step equations. So I begin this lesson with bellwork review problems, then began with direct instruction, and that's where the interactive notebooks come in. Students wrote the topic, solving two-step equations, the date, and the page number in the appropriate place in their table of contents and on the pages in their notebooks. I made this foldable right along with my students, not only so they knew what to expect, but also so they knew what it would look like, and it's a great skill to learn how to take notes if you see somebody else doing it. We made this foldable, and I started with a complex problem that had several steps to take. Eventually, with student help and some guidance from me, we came up with the steps to solving these equations. We made the whole foldable and went through each step with the description on the outside of what to look for, and then actually did that step to a problem on the inside. Following the foldable, we did video examples on Khan Academy. We did I, we, you style problems where I provided examples. We solved them together, and then students were required to solve problems on their own. The important part is that I encourage students to use this foldable and their I&B when solving problems together, whether that's individually or in groups. It allows them to help teach each other as well, because if they have this resource, they have something to double check. They have a friend that they can help get the answers from if they are unclear about what a step in the foldable is. And it allows me to check in with other groups because they know to check this before they ask me. Following that, we ended the class with individual work and an exit ticket to gauge understanding. The second day of this lesson, so we're still using this page of our interactive notebook. We're on the second day now. We started with the review of the problems types that we did yesterday. I had some more direct instruction and followed by station work where students used their I&Bs for help. Next, students worked in small groups to complete their I&B output, or the knowledge problems, the show what you know problems. This means that I asked them to solve problems related to the lesson goal of solving two-step equations, but I took it a step further than the practice problems they were doing. I had them do some error analysis problems, describing what they did wrong in each step, and then I also had them solving two-step equations. After that, and some individual work where I was able to check in with students based on their performance, we took a quiz on solving two-step equations. I then ended the lesson with an exit ticket that had to do with writing and solving two-step equations from a word problem, which was the next step in the unit from this. This was a great way to gauge prior knowledge and to see if they were able to use what they knew about two-step equations, previous notes that we had on solving one-step equation word problems, to see how I could inform my teaching for the next day. So overall, I found these notebooks to be incredibly useful organizationally, as well as a great instructional tool, and I've gotten positive student feedback on them as well.